Good evening, everyone, and thank you for attending this presentation. Well, first of all, thank you to the organizers for providing me with the opportunity to show you an example of how a project in a city-rated context could work. And then tonight, I will present to you how Smart City and how Smart City initiatives work in Hamburg, Germany. So before going into any details, I'd just like to give a very quick presentation about myself, who I am, what my background is, and what my actual motivation is to initiate such a project. So my name is Joe Hopper, and I work as a management consultant at Scalian. And Scalian itself is also a consulting agency in the aerospace and defense sector, industry, so automotive industry, generic industry, and wind energy. So my entire life, I've worked in consulting. However, I was born and I was risen in a small rural town in central Germany, so in Low Saxony. And although it is a small town, only 30,000 people, it has a very dense industry. So you have a large confinement of different industries, mainly in the area of manufacturing. And at this point, I can already make my first reference to city, because both industrial landscapes and cities, they could be described as rather complex systematic structures with a large number of subsystems, and these subsystems, or both of these systematic structures, they have they share some characteristics, such as their interdisciplinary setups, and that you have countless material and information flows that are flowing through these subsystems that have often grown historically over centuries, making them extremely difficult to manage, despite that we're living in a digital age. I mean, theoretically, you could make a quantitative and qualitative assessment and statement from every flow that exists, given that you have the right data available and that you have the right system implemented. So regardless, I have made, so as you can see, my educational background they all relate or are all associated to an industrial context. And I mean, I think it is very legitimate that you can make a connection to a city, because, as I've just explained to you, both systems share a lot of commonalities and characteristics. So in my leisure time, I work on this Smart City Hamburg project, which takes some of my time, and I counsel students and pupils from non-academic households, and I help them to manage their career and also to help them how to finance their studies, for example. I like traveling to Africa because I have family ties there, so it is more or less my second home. And traveling to Africa on a regular basis, I can see that the cities there, for example, are transforming in huge dimensions, because Africa is going to face an explosion in population within the next years, and they have to face a lot of challenges, which I will introduce to you, and they have to come up with countermeasurements in order to face these challenges in a sustainable and economic valuable way. So you can see here a number of factors which motivated me to start this Smart City Hamburg project. I mean, we are facing technological changes, a shift in industries, a shift in jobs. We are facing an urbanization rate between 70 and 90%, an explosion in population, more than 2 billion people by 2015 in comparison today. We will have an even more increased consumption of finite resources, and considering that we already consume more that we can provide at consistent capacities, we will face an even more drastic situation in 2050, meaning we have to come up with some measurements to counterattack these challenges. And of course, I can only name Hamburg as an example. We have outdated energy grids. I mean, the city of Hamburg and its energy grid, it does not grow in the same pace as the demand in energy rises. I mean, by 2050, we have a doubling in demand of energy, and considering the investments that are done for our energy grids, we are facing a horrible scenario by 2050, we could even consider to have a blackout within the next couple of years. And this is something that is, well, it's not negotiable. There's something that we have to tackle. So, and although Hamburg is a rather small country, a rather small city with only 8 million people, it is a classic example of a city that has, I mean, it exists for centuries, and it has also grown historically. And as I've already mentioned, it is not developed with the same pace as the challenges do, meaning that smart city initiatives are incremental, or they are necessary in order for the Hamburg to provide everything that a citizen needs to perceive it as a functional city. Because after all, a city, it is maintaining, or it's trying to maintain the optimal flow of material and information flows at a given rate. So before I go into any details, let's have a look at some key elements of what a smart city should hold. I mean, we have here basically 3 elements: politics, people, and external elements. And these are all necessary because a smart city, in my opinion, it represents the inclusion of all these 3 elements, including the measurement and usage of innovation in terms of non-technological and technological innovations in order to tackle political, social, ecological, whatever you can think of, in order to provide a mobile, green, social, inclusionary, and economic, well-functioning city. And so in 2014, the government of Hamburg, they have already met with Cisco. Probably some of you know Cisco. It's a software developer, amongst others, and they have agreed to make Hamburg smart by the year 2050. However, I mean, please don't understand me wrong. This is a legitimate course, but in my opinion, this is my key motivation for actually giving birth to this Smart City Hamburg project was because one key element, namely the people, were not included. And as you can see from the next slide, the people of Hamburg, they do have their opinion and their worries in terms of what is happening to their city and their lives. We are talking about, I've already mentioned, the technological changes that are happening, shifting industries, what happens to my job, what happens to the housing situation. Just for you to know, we are having a very drastic housing problem in Hamburg, meaning there's not enough living space available, considering the amount of people that already live here or starts moving to Hamburg in the next coming years. People have a demand for green spaces, urban gardens, scientific institutions, jobs. They want a well-functioning industry and infrastructure, especially with regards to public transportation. And as I've already mentioned before, our energy grid is beyond catastrophic. And once again, it is very important to include external parties in terms of scientific and economic institutions and organizations, because with Smart City, this is a rather new concept. We are talking about a market that is nearly untapped and that has a huge potential and a growth of up to 90%, regardless if it's smart grids, if it's the make by customer supply chains, if we're talking about smart analytics, micro markets, water management, meter management, whatever you can think of. There are countless things to name, which we haven't tapped at this moment. And in numbers, we are talking about a market that is worth more than 200 billion euros. So, of course, this will attract potential investors and potential organizations, because for them, this is a huge market that is worth a lot of money. But however, you cannot, but in my opinion, you can make even more of this market if you consider the aspect or the approach of following a vertical integration of agendas, meaning paying respect to the market growth potential, to the value it has, and to the worries and opinions that the people of the city have. Because after all, I mean, for Hamburg, we are talking about the worries and also ideas of 1.8 million people. So these are 1.8 million potential brilliant ideas of how a city can become more smarter. And when I talk about the vertical integration of agendas, I mean two approaches. We have a top-down agenda, referring mainly to political agendas in terms of providing an infrastructure and an IT infrastructure and to optimize the flow of goods and people, and in order to address services more efficiently. And with respect to the bottom up, I'm talking about people in terms of generating and sharing data, so open data provided by the government, of course with transparent insight, because the people want to know what happens to my data, but they should also act on a collaborative level, share resources, and of course forward ideas. But of course, they need a platform in order to forward these ideas. And there's a good example I know from Switzerland. So top down, once again, is by providing for example, the measurements and the devices in order to track data, and also to the implementation of a central data storage. And bottom up, then again refers to crowdsourced information and GPS, for example, for blind people. And for Switzerland, I've seen a wonderful idea. The government, they have provided an application which the people, so every citizen can download. And whenever the citizens, when they see a damage in the infrastructure, they can make a picture of this damage, forward it to the government, and the government then can take countermeasures in order to, well, either remove or mitigate the damage within the infrastructure. I think this is a brilliant idea, and this is a good example of how governments, corporations, and the citizens of a city can work together on a collaborative level. So, Smart City Hamburg. It's still a rather new project. As you can see, I've given birth to this project basically in June 2016 via a social platform called Meetup. And Meetup is basically a platform where people can meet with common-based interests. And I've always found this idea very intriguing, and so I've decided to initiate this project, and I've spent some weeks, or let's say nearly 4 months, to spread the idea, basically via buzz marketing and social media. And it took me some time to start my first workshop, which basically was about, well, explain to the people what a smart city is, what are the challenges, what do we need to incorporate when we want to make a city a sustainable smart city. And at one point, the number of people that have joined the course, I think at the moment we are nearly 700 people. It just grew over my head and over my capacities. So I have tendered the role for a co-organizer to anyone who was interested. And by a lucky coincidence, the Hamburg public transportation, which is the largest transportation provider in Hamburg, they have asked if they could join courses. So we merged, and now we have made an agenda, and every 4 weeks we now hold workshops with specific projects in the premises of the Hamburg Transportation Association, also known as the HVV. And they develop and implement intelligent mobility concepts. And now every 4 weeks or every month, we invite external speakers and external experts on very specific topics, and I would like to show you how this works. So the setup of our meetup workshops, as I already explained, we have specific topics per workshop, reaching from energy management to infrastructure management, industrial management, smart meter management, water management, port management, whatever you can think of, there's a topic for it, and there's a workshop for it. And most importantly, there has to be case study related. I mean, we take smart city initiatives from other cities, such as Amsterdam or Barcelona. We take them as an example and as a reference, but we always try to no, we don't try. We connect the workshop to a local case study in order to make it less abstract and near to reality, because the citizens, they need to associate and identify with a specific problem and solution at hand. And of course, we encourage everyone to take part at a roundtable dialogue. So at this moment, we had a lot of citizens, we have the experts, but we also have local politicians on one table in one room, and we talk about the problems that need to be addressed and the potential solutions that we can provide. And of course, very important, we provide beverages and enough food for everyone to discuss for a couple of hours. Our intention with our workshops, we want to provide insight. We want to show people that there are experts and that there are people who care, that want to find solutions to problems that exist within. I mean, it doesn't matter where the people come from. If they have a problem, they can address it to us, and we will try to find a solution if there's a specific need and demand for it. Of course, we want to create a dialogue, and we want to generate buzz, because we want to increase the awareness of our project among the citizens of Hamburg. And our aim, I think it is very understandable. We want to make everyone a winner, not just economic corporations or politicians or citizens, but all together. We want to create synergy effects. We want to be able that everyone can expand his network and his business relationship. And of course, we want to distribute the knowledge and awareness of the problems at hand. So, and for each project that we address in our workshop, we follow a layer-based approach. I mean, this layer-based approach, it is nothing new, and you can find this approach with every sound project management that exists. That means we carefully measure the problem and the solution that we could provide and introduce, and we carefully measure if there's in fact a point of embodiment existent. Is there actually a need or a demand for this solution? Because at the end of the day, if you start heavily planning and investing and building this solution, there might be no one interested in this solution, meaning you would waste money, you would waste capacities, and you would lose the trust of the people. So we want to address individual needs, and we want to pinpoint actions and specific investments. And I want to show you now the overview of our meetups that have taken place to this moment, and the meetups that are going to take place in the near distant future. So as I've already said, it started with Smart City at the beginning. So I've introduced those interested to the core components, terms, and definitions of a smart city, because everything needs to have a beginning, and I think it is important to understand what I'm actually talking about and what this initiative is all about. And then the second workshop was already done before I have merged with the Hamburg Transportation Association, when they have introduced us to their Vision 2030, which I will show to you on further detail on the following slides. So they have a very specific vision of how Hamburg should look in 2030 with regards to the local public transportation infrastructure, which should be fully digital, but more on detail in the next slides. And then we had a workshop together with Workplace Solutions, which is a software developer, and they have shown us how to make a port even smarter. Then next we had the Hamburg Transportation Association, and they have shown us how prototyping could work in a public transportation environment. But once again, more detail later within this presentation. And the future, we have an upcoming workshop will be about digital platforms. So how can digital platforms ease the way of bringing people together on an analog level? Because, you know, a lot of people complain that the digitalization, it separates people instead of bringing them together. But in our opinion, this is false, because you can use digital platforms to bring people together on an analog level. It works. And of course, and we have vertical farming. So what is the future of food? How can supply chains look within the next 20 years within the city? Because we're talking here about a drastic change and a drastic transformation of local and also global supply chains. And furthermore, we will talk about smart energy, smart grids, smart water, because for Hamburg as a port city, it's very important to have a good forecast of their water levels. And another workshop, and we will get an external speaker from Japan for this, is about zero waste. Because the Japanese, I mean, started with Toyota, they are experts in consequentially reducing the waste used. It's going to be a wonderful workshop, and this is going to take place in August. So if you're interested, of course, you're welcome to join. So let's come to the second workshop, digitalization and mobility as a service. And as I've already told you, this is the Vision 2030 of the Hamburg Transport Association for Hamburg. And it is made up out of three main compartments, meaning, or basically resembling, sharing initiatives. So car sharing and a city bike, for which I will have some images later in this presentation. We talk about local public transportation. So Hamburg should be they want to have a fully automated subway by 2030, and they want to have an entirely emission-free and fully electrified carpool. At this moment, well, I would say about 30% of the bus and car fleet in Hamburg, in terms of public transportation, is fully electrified. More is, well, is this an incremental change taking place? Because as I've already mentioned to you, our energy grids are a little bit outdated, and heavy investments are needed in order to have the bus and car fleet fully electrified. And of course, the last one is on-demand services. You can probably, most of you know Uber, ride sharing, but this is at the moment on hold because they are facing some legal challenges with regard to the Public Transportation Act. And at the core, at the center of these three compartments are autonomous vehicles. So by 2030, the vehicles, regardless if it's shared cars, if it's a bus fleet or ride sharing, they should all be fully autonomous. And this is a very, very short time frame. We are talking about 12 years, but considering the amount of investments done, I would say this is a scenario that is within reach, and it is realistic in my opinion. So please take a look at this presentation. Maybe some of you can refer to some of these problems within cities, meaning you have no Wi-Fi, you have a long loading time, you have a low battery, and you have no connection. We call these first world problems and modern anxiety. Nothing that is too drastic, but considering that every one of us has a smartphone and that we are very dependent on our smartphone, these minor problems will become major problems at one point, especially in a time where everything becomes more digitalized. So what can we do about this? The Hamburg Transport Association, they have come up with a wonderful idea. This is, by the way, a picture of a rather modern, fully electrified bus, and every bus has a free VLAN hotspot, and inside every bus, so every seat, furthermore, has a USB port. And to this USB port, you can attach your phone, and by that, you can upload or you can charge your batteries. This is a good start. If you have a look at Amsterdam, for example, if I'm not mistaken, Amsterdam has been nominated the smartest city in Europe in the last couple of years. And as a matter of fact, they have free WLAN across the entire city. I mean, this is really amazing. But then again, having a free VLAN hotspot within every public transportation bus is a good start, and the next public transportation device will be the subways that exist within Hamburg. And this is, by the way, a picture of the city bike. So you can register for this service. You can download the app, and you can use these red bicycles for the first 30 minutes without any charge. You can use them for free to cover short distances within the city. And these city bike islands, I would call them, are located across various points in the city of Hamburg. And as a matter of fact, the city of Hamburg has been the very first city to actually provide this kind of solution. It is, I think now we have more cities. If I'm not mistaken, Copenhagen has this. I'm not too sure about Amsterdam, but considering that a lot of Dutch people drive a bicycle, I can imagine that this is already implemented. Let's come to the next workshop and the next project we have done together with the Workplace Solutions. Once again, a software developer in Hamburg, and they have come up. And why is this important? Because so port is probably the most important element for a harbor town like Hamburg. This is because, I mean, the port of Hamburg is not only the biggest seaport in Germany, but also one of the 20 largest ports in Germany. But even more important, it acts as a connective hub to other elements in the value chain, being responsible for thousands of jobs. Thus, competitiveness is a key element that needs to be provided and maintained. And considering the fact that by 2025, the number of containers moved is going up to 15.4 million containers, we're talking about an increase of 60%. And furthermore, considering the fact that the Port of Hamburg is not going to grow substantially by then, we have to come up with alternative drastic solutions in order to prevent bottlenecks in the near future. And to this moment, there are three main solutions. So at once, this was done by Cisco. So they have installed 150 cameras around the Port of Hamburg. And these cameras, they record, they monitor, and they analyze the local traffic around the port 24/7, making forecasting the traffic flow, and to be able to counteract on transport, on public, on traffic congestions. And they have also provided or developed and provided an application for truck drivers that navigates them to free parking spaces, because this is in Hamburg, finding a free parking space is a very big issue. And second of all, I think this is a very brilliant idea, is GPS for containers. So every container that has been moved within the Port of Hamburg at least once has a GPS attached to it. And this allows for the exact localization of every container among millions. And this is very beneficial for the transshipping rate, because you can place your container at the right time and at the right place when needed. And so last but not least, we have the Workplace Solution Development and Implementation, also known as multi-touch maneuvers. So, and ship handling is probably one of the most fundamental processes that is taking part in a port, because it's not only, because it is basically defines the on-time arrival of a vessel, the unloading and loading time, and also the departure time at berth. And furthermore, it also deals with navigating vessels through confined channels, also in proximity to other vessels, but of course also plus other operations and replenishment at sea. And this also, and a key ability for a ship handler is of course a good understanding of incoming vessels and having good understanding of the sea, of the tides and the swells and the wind, and of course the shape of the seabed, and all these, because all these elements at the end of the day, they will affect the vessel's movement and performance. And as I've told you at the beginning, performance and competitiveness are key elements that need to be provided in order to be among the top 20 ports in the world. In the past, this was done with analog nautical tools such as a ruler, a calculator, pen and paper. And the workplace solutions, they have come up with multi-touch screens resembling the size of kitchen table if you want. And here you can, and every analog nautical tool that I've just mentioned to you, and every maneuver that you can do with the ship has been fully digitalized without the use of a mouse or a keyboard, making them extremely lean and intuitive. And I've brought along some pictures so that you can make yourself an image of what I'm talking about. So please have a look. This is what these multi-touch screens look like, and you can do every maneuver that you can think of with the ship fully digital. I have another image here. This is a brilliant concept, and as far as I'm not mistaken, the same concept was also done or is currently in development for roads. So in case you are manufacturing, or in case you are having road constructions that will affect other road compartments in the city, this app allows you to have a holistic overview of all these construction sites and how they will interact with each other. Let's come to service prototyping. This was so service prototyping is closely resembled to the idea of a service design. So meaning that you have the ability and allows for the visualization of an idea with a prototype already holding the main features of the final service. I mean, if you remember the layer-based approach, this is closely linked to it, because the intention with this procedure is the intention of this procedure is based on a lessons learned approach, meaning that before you invest and introduce and implement solutions that nobody asked for, you put a prototype instead at the place or at the point of embodiment, and you let it run for a couple of days and weeks, and finally you will obtain the opinions of those who have been directly affected by this prototype. This approach allows for a thorough evaluation and, I mean, basically or theoretically, countless ways of improvement and possibilities by system analysts, because you constantly get a feedback of your final customer. And I brought along an example. So I'm sorry, this is an ICE. I haven't received a picture from a subway, but basically this was done, so this project was done at one specific station, and above each train compartment, a bar was installed. And this bar changed its color based on the available seats per train compartment. So if the capacities were full, meaning that the seats were all occupied, the bar turned red. If seats were available, they were green. Or if they were fully available. And if it was in between and the algorithm was not able to yet fully make a statement if the seats are occupied or vacant, it was yellow. Of course, as you can imagine, as this is a prototype, the algorithm behind it was not yet fully developed. But as I've told you, this is not the intention, because the intention is to find out if the service would be accepted by the citizens that are affected at this station, and if they see a demand for it. So having a in-between or mid-between algorithm that is finished by 50%, it decreases the costs, and it has also a better proven return on investment, and also it shortens our development time. And as a matter of fact, for this project, it had a positive feedback. So now at this moment, this project is going to be implemented across every station in Hamburg. So I'm curious how this is going to look in the next couple of months and years. But I think this is a very amazing service, as it heavily increases the services that the Hamburg Transportation Association can provide to its citizens. So this is all for the moment. I'd like to thank you for your attention. And of course, if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Thank you.